Welcome to Bible Prayers and Untold Stories, where every whisper verse is truth, and every story brings light to the soul. Let us journey through the sacred words and uncover the wisdom hidden in prayer. There are people who, while they are still alive, we will never fully understand. There are actions, seemingly as small as the wind blowing through the night, but they change someone's life forever. And there are saints who walk in the dust of everyday life, bringing light without a title, without a throne, without a halo. My name is Jack Brennan, 63 years old, owner of a used bookstore in Denver. I am not a priest nor a theologian, but I once saw a man kneeling in the dark, praying for a boy whose name no one remembered. And that man is now the Pope. This story did not begin in Rome. It did not begin in the Vatican. It began in Peru, a land of red dust, where faith was tested and the love of God was reborn in silence. If you're skeptical, if you're tired, listen to this story. Behind the glass, two men standing in the harsh sunlight, one in a straw hat, the other in a cassock, holding a clipboard. The late afternoon light filters through the dusty window, reflecting off the glass. A wrinkled hand gently lifts the photo out and places it on the bookshelf. Jack Brennan, voiceover. I don't know why I've kept this photo for nearly 40 years. It's old, faded, no one asked for it. But to me, it's a door, an opening to a summer when my soul was turned upside down. The man on the right is Pope Leo XIV, but I didn't meet him in Rome. I met him in Peru under the name Father Bob. I was 22 years old, fleeing a plastic America, and a God who no longer moved me. I want to find him somewhere else in the sweaty dirt, where prayers are given without microphones. A group of young volunteers stepped out of the truck, luggage in hand. In the middle of the courtyard of the small church in Trujillo, a man in a gray habit, a wide-brimmed hat, a clipboard in his hand, was giving orders in rapid Spanish. Everything was neat and tidy, no room for delay. Jack looked at Father Bob from a distance, his eyes suspicious, the sunlight on his face making him squint. Jack's voiceover. He looks like he came out of a barracks. Every word is measured. Every gesture is calculated. A soldier in a monk's robe. I came here to find Jesus, the one who washed the feet of the poor, who ate with sinners. But instead, I found a shift roster. Father Bob checks the temperature of the vaccine. He straightens a label on the medicine box with a serious face. Jack carries a rice bucket, sweating profusely, glancing at Father Bob with displeasure. One evening, everyone is singing by candlelight. Bob walks by, pauses for a beat, then leaves without saying anything. Jack's voiceover. I wanted to be moved to cry, to see simple miracles in the eyes of the poor. But all I saw was a man who didn't smile and a God who didn't speak. Jack writes in his diary at night by the light of an oil lamp. The lines are slanted. Am I wrong, or does he just have no heart? The camera pans from the notebook to the small photo he took of Father Bob that afternoon, his face stern and expressionless. Jack's voiceover. I came to Peru to find God, but the more I look at him, the further I feel from him. Little did I know that the place where he stood, where I thought was dry, would be the place where God would break me to sow something new. A new day in Trujillo. The clock strikes 6 a.m. The chapel bell rings briefly. Father Bob reads a schedule. Clean water, zone 3 before 10 o'clock. Clinic opens at 11 o'clock. No lateness. The volunteers line up hurriedly, their faces confused and tired. Jack stands apart, his shirt rumpled, frowning at the roster. Jack's voiceover. Every day starts like a shift. No prayer, no listening, just duty. I came here to find Jesus, but all I see are forms, numbers, schedules, and slogans. In the sweltering midday heat, volunteers are loading rice, medicine, and relief supplies into pickup trucks. Jack dragged a heavy sack of rice, his hands sweaty and dusty. He glanced at Father Bob, who was examining the label on the medicine box, frowning and correcting his mistakes. Jack muttered to his friend, Jack, in a low voice, do you feel We're working for a Catholic warehouse? Not a mission? Theo, laughing softly, at least this warehouse has clean water and no robberies. Jack's voiceover. I don't feel like a servant. I'm a time link, a worker in the coal machine of faith. Evening, a group of volunteers sat in the yard, oil lamps flickering. A man strummed a guitar, softly singing a Spanish hymn. Jack closed his eyes, falling into the sacred space. Father Bob walked by, paused for a beat, listened for a moment, said nothing, continued walking. Jack's voice, just a word. What are you singing tonight? Or just a look of sympathy. But no, he is a man of schedules, not of improvisation. A candle that does not give off fragrance, that burns only on time. A food distribution in a hill village. People lining up in the sun. Children laughing, playing with a new bucket of clean water. Cheers. An old woman holding a sack of rice kisses Jack's hand. He is moved. Suddenly there is a noise behind him. Jack turns around. Father Bob is holding a skinny teenager by the hand, holding another sack of food. No scolding, but Bob's eyes are cold and determined. He whispers in Spanish. Esto no justicia. Egoismo. Dios vi. The boy bows his head, puts down the sack, and quietly retreats into the crowd. Jack's voiceover. My Jesus wouldn't do that. He would hold the boy, give him more, and then sit back and talk. And him? He looked like a holy customs officer. Jack sat on the back of the old truck, looking down at the ground, his hands clenched. He turned to Theo, whispering, Jack, I can't take any more. I didn't come here to be anyone's moral policeman. Theo didn't argue, just looked at Jack for a long time. Theo, get some sleep? Maybe tomorrow will be different. Jack's voiceover. I've made up my mind. Once again wounded by a heartless faith. I'm leaving. One more step, and I'll pack my bags and catch a bus back to Lima. But God always chooses the unexpected moment. It was a hot night. Jack lay on his side on the rickety wooden bed. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The wind from the window only moved the thin curtains. The camera pans slowly, pans across the bed. Theo is fast asleep. Jack opens his eyes to look at the mottled brick ceiling. Jack's voiceover. I can't sleep, not because of the heat, but because I'm angry. Angry at him, angry at myself, and angry at God for not speaking up. Jack turns over, sighs, then quietly gets out, puts on his slippers, puts on his shirt, opens the door and goes outside. Jack walks down the dimly lit chapel hallway, the sound of crickets chirping. He walks out into the backyard, where a section of the rotten wooden fence has been broken. The wind blew softly. A candle flickered in the distance. He stopped. He heard something very faint. Prayer, indistinct, like a whisper drifting through the night. Not chanting. Direct, trembling, anguished speech. Jack's voiceover. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I realized it was a voice. Not preaching, not instructing. It was prayer, real and lonely. Jack crept behind the shed. The angle was narrow, the camera positioned as if the audience were peeking in with Jack. In front, Father Bob, kneeling, barefoot, eyes closed, forehead almost touching the ground, hands clasped together. He had no idea who was watching. Jack voiceover. No roster, no clock, just a man kneeling in the dust before God without anyone to see. Candlelight flickered from the cottage in the distance. A shadowy figure loomed by the window, the boy's house from the day before. Father Bob was still praying, not looking up, not pretending. A moment later, he slowly crossed himself, as if each movement weighed the weight of his entire day. He stood, brushed the dirt off his knees, didn't look around, walked away quietly. Jack voiceover. You didn't knock. Leave nothing behind. Leave yourself alone, kneeling for a poor child, whom you had just rejected. I stood there, petrified, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a blind man seeing. Jack returned to his room, laid down quietly, didn't say a word, worried, wide-eyed. The camera zooms in quietly, No tears, but the light in the eyes is different. Jack's voiceover. I came to Peru to find God, but I kept looking for him in the bright miracles. It turns out he was bowing silently in the dust and darkness. The next morning, the small kitchen of the infirmary, sunlight slanted through the bars. Jack sat with Theo, quietly stirring his coffee. His face was thoughtful, different from usual. He leaned in, asked softly, as if afraid to break something fragile. Jack, that boy the other day, do you know who he is? Theo pauses for a beat, looks at Jack for a long time. Your mother has terminal liver failure. No hospital bills, no medicine. Father Bob paid for it, out of his own pocket. No one knows. Jack voiceover. I can't say a word. It's like someone just removed a stone from my heart that I've been holding for years, without even realizing it. Late morning, Jack goes to find Father Bob. He's standing alone in the backyard, holding the inventory, his eyes still focused. Jack walks slowly, hesitates, then stops in front of him. The soft sunlight falls on both of them. Jack, awkward, voice choked. Do you have a minute? Bob looks up, not in a hurry, just nods. I'm listening. Jack, I misjudged you. About everything. Silence. A light breeze blows. Bob says nothing, just looks at Jack. A direct, silent, unaccusatory look. Jack voiceover. I waited for him to respond. An apology. A sneer. But no, just a presence. As if he was ready to forgive before I could even admit my mistake. They both sat down on the chapel steps. Neither looked at the other, just at the ground. Jack, I thought you were a machine. A system and a habit. I hated you. Hate because I saw in you what I feared I would become. Rigid, cold. But last night, I saw it. Father Bob remained silent. After a moment, he said, very softly, Bob, I used to be like you. Jack turned, surprised. Bob continued, his eyes still distant. Bob, I came here too with eyes hungry for miracles. But Peru gave me no miracles. It gave me exhaustion, helplessness, and unanswered questions. I had to learn to love with both reason and faith. Father Bob raised his head, the morning light gently illuminating his face. He spoke, slowly, as if transcribing something from deep within. Bob, love without discipline dissolves into chaos. But discipline without love is just cruelty in the name of justice. Jesus, he brought both fire and order. Sometimes the gentlest thing is the right decision. Jack sat still. He said nothing. His face seemed to be relieved of a long-standing burden, not of Peru, but of his whole life. Father Bob placed his hand on Jack's shoulder, steady, unobtrusive. The camera slowly panned up the sky, light filtering through the leaves, like a wordless blessing. Jack's voiceover. I came here to teach, but I learned. I came to evangelize, but I was converted. And I came to find God. It turns out, God was waiting for me in the form of someone I once rejected. The last boxes were unloaded from the station. Old trucks parked in the yard, children waving. Jack hugged his Peruvian friends, his eyes filled with tears. Lucia, the nurse, smiled softly, handing Jack an old, restrung guitar. The two stood silently for a long time under the mango tree, not needing to say anything. Jack voiceover. 3.5 months. It may have been a short trip, but for me it was a burning, a quiet cleansing, where the faith was cleansed of pride and illusion. Jack and Lucia got married in a small chapel in New Mexico. They opened a used bookstore in Denver. Local kids came to read. Jack taught guitar. Lucia gave free medical care to the homeless. No bells of fame, just beautiful silence. Jack voiceover. We didn't become heroes. We didn't bring home missionary medals. But God remained. In every little moment of life, every old book, every evening of singing for nameless children. A peaceful morning. The wind blew leaves outside the glass window. Jack was pouring coffee when he paused, staring at his laptop screen. Robert Prevost is elected Pope Leo XIV. He puts down his coffee cup, silent. Jack's voiceover. I don't see a pope. I see a man who knelt by a landslide unseen by anyone. A pastor who doesn't need a throne, just a quiet corner to pray for a poor child. The camera returns to the present bookstore. Close-up, a faded photo taped behind the counter. Jack and Father Bob in the Peruvian sun. A curious customer asks, "Who was that in the photo?" Jack smiles, takes the photo down, and gently wipes the dust off. "Jack, the man who taught me how to find God, not in a sermon, but in the way a person lives." Jack sits alone in the bookstore, the afternoon light shining through the glass. He looks out at the street. The wind gently shakes the wind chimes by the window. The camera slowly moves closer to Jack's face. He looks up, looking straight at the audience. Jack's voiceover. "If you're lost, if you think the church is just a cold block of stone, then know this. There's still people silently praying for this world behind broken fences. And sometimes those people become popes." A small cross stands next to a dirt wall. At the foot of the cross is a faint kneeling mark in the dust, like a wordless sacred mark. Music rises, a soft, wordless choir. The text appears. Sometimes God doesn't send us a miracle, but a person,